Good evening, boxing fans, and welcome back. I'm Rumsfeld, and after all this time, I still don't know shit about boxing. But that's never stopped me from expressing my utterly worthless boxing opinions. This is Rummy's Corner. So of all the fights coming up that are scheduled for the first half of 2016, the one that interests me the most personally is the light heavyweight clash between Andre Ward and Sullivan Barrera. And being that this is Ward's first fight at 175, that alone makes this an interesting fight. But beyond that, Andre Ward is a bit of a peculiar situation in recent years. After winning the Super 6 against Carl Froch in late 2011, it looked like the sky was the limit for Ward, but he hadn't done a whole lot since then. He had a fight against Chad Dawson later in 2012, and then later in 2013 he fought Edwin Rodriguez. He didn't fight at all in 2014, and then last year he had one fight against Paul Smith. So now Ward is going to really get a chance to challenge himself in his debut at 175 against a Cuban fighter by the name of Sullivan Barrera. Now, a lot of fans aren't overly familiar with Barrera. He hasn't had a lot of TV exposure yet at this point, and he's pretty early on in his career. I think he's only had 16 or 17 fights so far. But since the Super 6 final, when Ward only fought 3 times, Barrera's actually managed to rack up 9 fights. And of those 9 fights, 3 of them happened last year. And he won all of them by stoppage. The first one was earlier in the year against Jeff Lacey. Yes, that Jeff Lacey. The one who fought Joe Calzaghe nearly 10 years ago. And Barrera had a good showing against Lacey in a bout that was very one-sided before the referee decided to mercifully stop it. I think it was in the 4th round. And in his most recent fight, he fought Karu Marat, a man who had previously been beaten by Nathan Cleverly and Bernard Hopkins. He looked good in that fight. And in between those 2 bouts, he had a fight against Zulika, which is arguably, I guess you could say, his toughest fight to date. Zulika put up a very game effort. I'll talk more about that fight in a little bit. But the things I've noticed about Barrera: he has a good Cuban amateur background for starters. He has an excellent jab, and that seems to be where everything gets going for him. It all starts with his jab. He follows it up with a good right hand. He has good foot movement. He's good at varying the speed on his punches. He seems most comfortable on the outside, working behind his jab and looking for openings with his straight right. But at mid-range, whether he's attacked or attacking, however the distance closes, he's very comfortable with throwing a nice variety of both hooks and uppercuts. And he's excellent at mixing these both upstairs and downstairs very effectively. And then he could quickly step back out and get into his ideal range where he could start working the jab and the right hands quickly. So he does a lot of things extremely well. Now, it's difficult to say how durable he is. I think he was only officially dropped once as a professional in a bout against Lee Campbell, but that fight itself, that knockdown that he suffered was more of a slip in my opinion. But going back to the Zulika fight, that was a fight where Barrera had to overcome a little bit of adversity. Zulika was really game, and while Barrera was in control for most of the fight, I think he suffered a cut due to an accidental headbutt. He may have lost a round or 2 there in the middle before he ended things in a pretty good manner. But it was a good fight, and I think it gave us a good insight into what Barrera is all about. And overall, everything I've seen from Barrera, this is no soft touch for Andre Ward. This is a guy that I think is coming to win and has the tools and the skills that he's going to give Ward a fight. So last year, Barrera had 3 fights. And Ward had just 1 fight after not fighting at all the year before. He fought against Paul Smith. And it's really tough to gauge where Ward is at right now because he didn't really have to take it out of first gear against Smith. Ward seemed content, working behind the jab, following it up with the right hand when the opening was there. And for the most part, that's what he did the entire fight. Smith was unable to really do much of anything in this fight. He was getting hit a lot, and he didn't have much in terms of offense. There was one time in one of the middle rounds, as you can see here, where Ward seems to have been shook. I know a lot of fans make a big deal about this, others are dismissive of it, but Smith got him with a pretty good shot there. And in any case, Ward didn't have to take it out of first gear, so we didn't see a lot of what is in his arsenal at the moment to see how close he is to form when he fought Froch. Whereas in the Super 6, Ward was very versatile and adaptable inside the ring, where against Kessler, he successfully broke his rhythm, the variety of different tactics that enabled him to just mentally and physically break Kessler down. Against Alan Green, I remember him fighting most of the fight. It seemed like it was in close quarters, where Ward was so close that Green had no way of getting off his punches, and meanwhile, Ward was masterfully maneuvering himself to find openings. He had the fight against Sakio Bika, which is actually one of his closer ones I remember from that time period. And then he beat Arthur Abraham, and of course he beat Carl Froch, where he was showing extreme versatility in fighting inside, outside, and finding ways to clobber Froch over and over again with a very effective variety of left hooks. So who do I think is going to win the fight between Andre Ward and Sullivan Barrera? Well, one thing I think is worth noting is that Andre Ward is usually shown an ability to neutralize his opponent's best weapon. And in my opinion, as I stated earlier, Barrera, for him, everything starts with the jab. So I think Ward is going to look for a variety of ways to neutralize that jab, disrupt his rhythm, and find ways to launch his offense. And I can see Ward doing this a variety of different ways. But the key for Ward doing this, I believe, without a shadow of a doubt, is going to stem from his feet. Ward has better footwork, I believe. Ward has faster feet. And he has a greater ability of being where he wants to be, positioning-wise. Now, Barrera is very good at positioning himself, but I think Ward's superior footwork and faster hands will enable him to get the advantage there far more often than not. If Ward can take away the jab, I think it could wind up possibly being a fairly easy fight for Andre. I think if he takes the jab away, Barrera's chances of winning are significantly diminished. And I do think that Ward can and will take the jab away from Barrera. But just because he does that, and even if he does that well successfully, there's always that Paul Smith getting to him with that one shot. How is Ward going to stand up to the power of a guy who's a little bit taller than him, naturally bigger, a guy who's been competing at this weight class? It'll be interesting to see, because Barrera does have a fine set of tools in his toolbox as well. It may not be quite as diverse and plentiful as what Ward has in his toolbox, but Barrera is no joke. Make no mistake about that. If Ward wins this fight in his debut at 175, he'll deserve credit for this victory. And of course, on the flip side, if Barrera does manage to beat Ward, he'll deserve credit as well. Interesting fight. I can't wait to see it. For my official prediction, I'm going to pick Ward by UD. I'm thinking 116, 112, 117, 111, something along those lines. I can't wait to see the fight. I think it's an extremely interesting clash of styles, and I hope we get a good fight where the best man wins. This is Rumsfeld. Thank you for tuning in. Please stay tuned for more episodes in the future. And if you like this video, subscribe to my channel. Thank you.